Okay, so we did started the user, adding the user and all that, correct? So where are we with that? Grant user sudo access and all that. I think we did that. Good. Okay, so when you create a user, what will happen here is it will create the user inside etc password file. Okay, this is the file where the user is created. So I'm going to connect to my first server, ZMPT, and I'm going to connect to my very first server here. It's passwordless, and I am there. I'm going to do host
I
name.
can't see your screen.
What?
I can't see your screen.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm in my first server here. Okay, so over here I created an ID. I created a ID called ZMPT. Okay, so if you do, can you go on mute, please? If you do ID ZMPT, this is where your ID information comes up. But where is this coming from? If you do cat etc password, and it's sitting in here. Okay, this is the information regarding the ZMPT user. All right. And did I already set up the user password? Command. Actually, let's work with the test user because I used test user earlier. SSH as test user. Okay, I said the. Okay, I've already done all this here. I don't have to tell you again what has happened here. Okay, so. So what I'm going to do is, let's create a new user here. I'm going to clear this, and I say ID, and I kind of don't like this here. Sudo su. Okay. I already went through all this here, so I think I have to get out of this. How to make a user. So in the last class I mentioned, if the user is in the wheel group, if you do ID test1, and if you see in the output, if you see the user has I group as wheel, that means this user has a ability to switch to switch as a become as a root, actually I should say. So let's go back in here. Let me exit here, and I'm going to come back here as test1. Okay, and then is asking for the password, because the reason is asking for the password is the SSH passwordless is not set up for that specific user. Okay, that's why it's asking that. And I think I messed up here, actually. I'll take this back here, and then this is supposed to be test1. Okay, I provide the password here, and if you do ID test1, you see he's a part of a wheel group, right? So now if you want to become a root user, all you have to do is sudo su and a hyphen, and you give the password for test user, and you are in as a root. Okay, this part we have already completed that. Okay, so once you become a sudo su root, then I told you up here, you're pretty much, you could do anything you want. So you first came in as a test user here, then you became root. Once you became root, that means you have full authority here. By the way, if you are going for any, okay, so moving along. So we notice here that we have the ID for a user ID is 1001, and group ID is 1001, and then where is this information coming from? Okay, so all this information is coming from the file. You go into vi etc login.defs. Okay, login definitions means login.def means login definitions. How are logins defined in here. So you have a bunch of information here. So the thing you are interested in here is password max days. So right now, if you have a large number set up here, that means password is going to expire after that many days. 10,000 days. How many is 10,000 days here? Let's take a look. So 20,000 days is about 27 years. So, literally you're saying that the password never expires. But this is the default one. In reality, this is usually set to 60 days. After the password is set to 60 days, then it will ask you to change the password, okay? So in this scenario, I'm not going to change it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this information so that you have it. I'll clean this up here because right now in the same document you have everything in here. But when you come here, I split the document up so that you could see, the basic commands, the VI editor, the redirector, all this at your fingertips. Is my screen freezing? Can you guys see it better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The screen is fine. It's just when you're switching from Word document to the putty, it's just overlapping each other. That's all.
Oh, I mean that part is okay, because I'm not typing in there at the moment. So,
Right.
and also this part is important here. I mean, all these things, all these things are defined when you're first setting up system in your environment. More than likely, when you go in, all these things are set up, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be dealing with the pain of setting these things up because it's already there. But if you end up being in a system engineer role where you set up everything from scratch, then you might have to do it. But it's not a rocket science, you just have to figure things out. So over here, these are self-explanatory, I think. The UID is minimum. So here the UID is starting with 1000. So that is true that our IDs are starting with 1000. Okay, it start with 1000 and end with 60,000. Okay, that's the range. And then system UID minimum is 201 and maximum is 199. Okay, so this part I'm not worried about that, but the only other part is GID ID minimum and maximum. So this part, so for example, if you change this to starting to 2000s, then the new ID going forward you will be creating which starts from 2000 series. Okay, any questions about that? All right, so now this part,
Can you repeat that again?
yeah. So right now, if you go back, if you do ID test 1, his ID is 1001, right? And if you do ID ZMPT, his ID is 1000. Okay? So let's go back in there and let's change it. And you could only change this around only as a user, as a root. and I'll go like in here. I don't like 1000 series, I like 2000 series here. Okay, and then over here group ID, I don't like 1000 series, I like 3000 series. Okay, so what will happen here is, let me just put this down here. Group ID series and maximum allowed. Alright, these are the maximum number of IDs allowed, and this is also maximum group IDs allowed. Okay, so let me get out of here, save and exit. Now I'm going to create a new user. Okay, user add, and then I'm going to use test2. Okay, and I hit enter. And if I do ID test2, now you see how this group ID is starting with 2000, because it's all because of the login definitions. This is where we change around the uh, information so that the computer grabs it from there and then creates the ID based on that. Okay, in normal circumstance at my work right now, not too much attention is being paid, because the people who is having the local ID are mostly the administrators. Okay, so they don't care what ID they have, and the local um, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so usually we are not worried about it. It also depends on how the setup you have at your job environment. If you're using a third-party application, then that's a different story. Right now at my work, it's being used as an Active Directory, so we are not worried about how this is appearing. And the local ID is only the user's IDs, which is normally administrators, and the application ID. For example, if you have like an Oracle database running, it may require a local ID. All right, that's about it under user administration. Not a big deal. Moving along, I should go into permissions, right? Yeah. All right, let me start permissions here from where I will move on. So let's see here. Okay, today's date is 12/2022. guys, give me 1 minute here, okay? Hold on. Okay, I'm back here. Sorry, guys. Thanks for being patient. All right, let's get going. And let's see what I got here. All right, so let's work on permissions here, okay? Let me clear the screen. And let's do this here. If you have anything in your directory, just remove everything. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file, touch file1. Okay, and if I do ls-l and I hit enter, so what is coming up here on my screen is, I know this is file1, but what are the other things that are showing up here? Okay, so what I have here is, let me annotate. Okay, so this part I have here is the user info. What? Okay, this part is user access, and this part is group information. Okay, in that you have three spaces here, three positions, R, W, and a hyphen. Okay, these are the owner's permission. Owner's permission. And this part is a group permission. Can you go on mute, please? Okay, and then another three spots we have here is others. Others permission. Okay, user group, owners group, user. So all right, I think that's not enough for you guys here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down furthermore. So let me just download this.
I just have a question. I think you might answer it during the breakdown, but um, so when I did touch file one,
Mm-hmm.
so instead of root, it just says my name, Shaquille, and then Shaquille. So that's user info and group info is just me only.
Yeah. So now the user, the owner's permission, that's yours permission now. The user Shakil's permission. Right now, in this case, whoever is using that ID or whoever is creating that file is the owner of that file. Okay. So in here, you would see in here this part here, right, where the root is. Root
Yes.
and root. You would have, what do you have? Shakil.
Yes.
Yeah. The reason being is earlier I showed you the name of the group is also Shakil. Okay. In Linux environment, what it's doing is when you create a user ID Shakil, it is also creating a group ID Shakil, and Shakil is a part of a group Shakil. I know it is confusing because the name should, at least the group should have been different, but for some reason that's how it's done.
Okay.
Okay, so then the permissions is not showing the others in here. It should have at least also showed the others where root and what would the others would have, right? But it's not showing that. So I'll show that in a breakdown here. Okay. All right. Okay, let me do the breakdown here. So let me copy this part. Okay, I'll make it big enough so that you can see it. So we are worried about the first three positions here. Okay, and then the second three positions is this color, and next three positions is I'm going to change it to yeah. So if you look closely, the highlighted part is referring to about 9 positions here. The one above it or the one before it, I'll tell you in a minute here. That's also another position here, but I don't want to say anything about it yet. So what is happening here is so I said this part is the first three positions is users. Okay, so let me do let me put a table here, and before that okay, so the first three positions is referring to users, user or owner, and he's referred to as a little u. Okay, and group is used with little g, and others means if they're not part of a group and if they're not part of a owner, then it becomes others. So for this file, for my file, other would be Shakil would be other here. So if I have any content in the file, Shakil should be able to read this file. Okay, so I'll tell you what R stands for. And then each file have read, write, execute. Read, write, execute. And again, read, write. Okay, so each of these three positions have read, write, execute, but read, write, execute for who? For either owner, for group, or others. Okay, and the formula is each number, each permission has a number also with it. Okay, so I'm gonna say right here, I'm gonna put in the table. Undo. Okay, let me merge this. Not that. Okay, so I'm gonna say permission number value. Okay, read value is set with 4. Write value is also w and equals to r, lowercase r, w, and execute. There is another value called execute, and it's represented with x, and the value of execute is 1, value of read is 2, and value of value of read is 2, value of write is can't talk today. Value of read is 4, value of write is 2, and then value of execute is 1. Okay, and if you do a total, total max, how much is that? How much is the total? 4, 2 and 1. What is the total?
7.
Total
7.
would be 7. Yeah. So now let's see here. Help me with the owners here. Looking at this part here, the yellow part. What is the read value?
6.
Okay. No. Give me what is
Total.
total.
Only read is 4.
Okay, right now it's 4. And then write value is what?
2.
2. And then execute, we don't have any execute value here, so it's 0. And going to the green part, what is read? How much is read?
4.
4. And how much
0,
is 0, 0. And here same thing, 4, 0, 0. Okay. Now the total value for owner, what is the total value for owner is? What is the total? 4 plus 2
6.
plus
6.
0, 6. Okay. And then over here,
4.
4.
okay. And
4 again.
yeah, 4 and 4. 4 and 4. Okay. So now what is happening here is the value, the number value of this permission is 644. And this guy has 644. Did you get it? Now we're gonna build on this here. So let me move this part here. Actually, let me move this up here. Okay. Okay, so the permission for our file is so this file, so permission for our file is what? Permission
4.
permission for file, very good. File 1 is 644 or read write, yeah, okay, you'll just stay with the number value 644. Okay, now, so what does read stands for? Read is read, a user can read file. Write, a user can write to file or edit file. Okay, and execute means delete or cd into the folder, cd into the folder. Okay, and also run script. Okay, so you could see execute is a little it could be harmful, right? If you have execute permission, you could end up deleting the file. If a Shakil could come in and he have an execute file, he could end up deleting it. So we don't want that. Even the owner of the file does not have execute permissions right away, because it could damage the file or it could create some harm. Okay, to be on a safe side, it's not allowed. So
I
current,
have a question.
yeah,
So why isn't this, because this is a root file,
yeah.
root user, so how come it's not, the execute is not there? I mean,
It's a fail-safe way. Still, even for a root user, the root could assign itself the execute permission, and then he could do it. Okay, by default, it's not allowed.
okay, okay.
But root, I could go into your folder and delete your file as a regular user. So root have full permissions no matter what. So the permission is, how is this? User group. Let me put another. Are you guys following along with me, right? User group other, okay? So the user is read write, group is read, and the permission is 644. Okay, so keep this information with you all the time because this will be really handy. The permission, actually this one, permission number value, read number 4, write number value is 2, and then execute is 1. Okay, so now we're going to work on modifying the permissions. Okay, so what we have is we have this permissions here, right? So this is the current permission for file 1. Okay, so we have a request. What we need is we need to grant full permission to user only. Leave group and others permission as is. All right, so what we have here is we have current permissions. We have current permission. You got to be a little bit careful when granting permissions, okay? If you end up granting wrong permission to a wrong person, then it could be a security issue, okay? And then let's see, we want permissions needed. So we're going to use this table here. So let's work on this one here. Read, write. It's always, everything is lowercase, guys, no matter what. If you see in the document, read, write, or the commands, if they are like in uppercase or whatever, it's always lowercase. Why? Because the Word document is actually auto-correcting it. And if you, when you're going through this, if you see if it's coming up and you're confused how the command is in uppercase, it's always lowercase. Okay, so tell me, it says grant full permission to user only. So this dude is user. So what would the permission look like in words? Not in words, in letters.
700.
In letters.
Oh, read, write,
Read,
execute.
write, and execute.
Okay.
Execute.
Read, write,
RWX.
RWX. And then the number value would be 7. And it says leave group and other permission as is. So this would be read and this would be read. So what is the number value for read is 4
4.
and 4. Okay. Now here's a new command you're going to learn. How you're going to do to change the permissions? chmod. Chmod means change modification. Change modify. Okay. And then we came up with the number 744, right? So just put the number 744 and the space and file 1. And you hit enter. Okay. And if you do ls-l, you see the permissions have been modified. If you look closely, there is a little X is showing up because now this file is executable.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Can't you just do chmod u plus rwx?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. There are 2 ways
Okay.
you can do it. So you use this using a number way. Okay. So you're using modifying permissions. Modifying permissions using number value. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same exact thing using the letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this value back to what it was original. What was the original number value?
644.
Yeah, I do chmod 644 and file 1, and if I do ls-l, I'm back to 644 value here. Now let's modify using letters. Modify permissions actually let me go back to the original the one we already modified. Then from there we're going to come back and modify, because I already in the process here. So I already put it here as read write execute has been modified, everything else has been left alone. Okay, now for the same file, what I need to do is add write permission to write and execute permission to write and execute permission to group. Okay, and add write permission to other. So let's bring our table back. This is the permission we have. Current permission. Okay, and permission needed. Okay, so it's saying add write and execute permission to group. Okay, so let's focus on group, and it's saying do write and execute. So what is the number going to change?
7.
Okay, good. And the second item we have is write permission to others. So it's saying add, okay? So add write permission to others. So it's going to be W here. So this will become 4 plus 2
6.
is 6. Okay. So what we're going to do is, now we're going to do it using the letters. So sometimes it's easy for you to use the letters rather than calculating the number. Okay. So what I'll do is chmod, and then now go back to what is group represented as. Group is being used as G, right? Right here. Read, write, execute. Over here, I said group is represented with G. So what I'm going to do is G group right here, and I'm going to do plus sign. I'm adding a permission to group, and what I'm adding here is I'm adding write and execute, and then comma, and other, he need only write permission here. So for other, what are we going to use? O plus W, and then name of the file. And if I do ls-l, and the permissions have been modified here. Read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write. So if you look at our table here, we have read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write. And if you want to grow a number, the permission will be 776. Okay, is that clear, or you need more explanation?
We're fine.
Okay, good.
The one thing in execute, if the person can delete run script as what is cd into folder. What do you mean by change directory?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So far, we've been only dealing with the files, right? Files permission. So when I'm going to talk about the folders permission, then I'll tell you about that, okay? All right, let's play a little bit. Then we'll go into the folders permission here. Okay, so let's do take away some permission. Take away or remove permissions. So to the same file, what we're gonna do is first one is remove all permission to remove all permission from others, okay, and remove execute permission from group. How would we do that? So these are the current permissions. Okay, so first one, it says remove all permission from others. So what do I need to do?
If you use the numbers, then 770
No. Okay.
chmod.
No. Well, let's first work on coming up with the number first, okay? So this is the current permission here, and I want to change to remove all permissions from other. What do I need to do for others first?
0.
Okay. So what would it, if I put it 0 here, what did it look like up here?
No read and no write.
Okay,
Nothing, no
good,
permission.
very good, very good. So it would be minus, minus, minus. Okay, it will be hyphen in there. Okay, that's what it looks like. And then over here, remove execute permission from group. So what do I need to delete?
X.
Yeah, good. So that would be left with 6. Okay, so the next permission we need to do is we need to give the permission what we could do is chmod 760 file 1. Okay, either you could do this, or if you're going to do it with the letters, how are you going to do it with the letters?
chmod O minus read RW.
Okay, oh, okay, very good. Minus means remove. Okay, so I'm doing chmod O from others. What I'm removing?
Read and write RW.
Okay, RW.
And then file 1.
What about group?
G minus.
G minus.
Yeah.
RW.
Only W.
Mm,
Only X. Only X.
yeah, only X. Very good. All right, and you go to file 1. And if you do ls-l, and this is the permission, we read it. Read, write, execute, read, write, and blank. So first for user is read, write, execute, read, write, and blank. So if you look at visually here, we confirm this is how it works. All right. What time is it? All right, so I'll continue on for another 10 minutes, then we'll take a 20-minute break. And now the next thing we have is called directory permissions. Directory means folder, right? We're going to work on folder permissions. So I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to remove everything. There is nothing there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory. What is the command to create a directory? Someone?
mkdir.
mkdir, and I'm going to give it a name, dir1, directory 1. Okay, dir1. Okay, if I do ls-l, now we have a little bit different default permissions here. Okay, so let's copy this part here. I'm going to put it in here. And copy everything. Okay, so now let's examine this a little bit closely. So okay, so now the very first thing, remember with the files, we this one had a hyphen here. So if it has a hyphen, that means the file is, if you have a hyphen, it's a file. And if you have a D as in dog, then it's a directory. Users, so directory also has user group and others. So if this helps me. And others. Okay. So we have D here is for just, it's a directory. Okay. Nothing fancy in here. And I'm going to basically copy and paste from the top here the permissions. It's the same exact thing, nothing new. Okay, and permission number value is the same. And also, so let's figure out what do we have as the current value here, okay, for the directory. So let's see here. Okay, if I may copy this from here, user group and others. Okay, so for this directory, what is the value?
Can you make that a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I will. Okay. So I have a user group and other, and this is 760. But this is not we are dealing with. Let me delete this and delete this. So what is the value here for users?
7,
7,
5,
5,
and 5.
5. And the letter value is read, write, execute. And this one is read minus execute. And the last one is read and execute here. Now you notice all three groups have execute in the permissions here. So why is that? So the reason being is, why is the directory has execute permissions? The act of going inside the directory cddir1 going inside the directory. For example, you come into the house, right? You come into the house, you have that, no, not house. You could come into the room. You have access to a building, you could go into the room, okay, but you cannot really do much in there. So going inside the room is called execute permissions for a directory, okay. So cd going inside a directory means you are executing a directory, you're not executing a file. So that's why you need to have a execute permission for a directory. And most of the time, most directories any user could get in the Linux environment, they have a read access. That means they could go inside the directory. Okay, so numeric value is dir 1 is 755. And also this is the default permission. All right, so the default permission for the directory is 755. Okay, and for root user, all the permissions, root user has full permissions regardless of the permission of a file. Okay, it's for a root user, he could have full permission. It doesn't matter. All right, so let's stop here and we'll take a break. We'll come back on the top of the hour at noon Eastern, noon Central, and then we'll continue on. All right, the break starts now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Can hear you.
Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay.
All right, so the next part is okay. So we have so the root has a full access here, no matter what. Okay. All right. So moving along. And did I tell you guys that the Linux treats as a file? So what Linux does is, I think I have a stat. Okay, so here I mentioned here that in Linux environment, file means a file, and file also means a folder or directory, because Linux treat the file and the directory as same when it's writing it down. When it's writing in the metadata, it treats the file and the folder as same exact way. Okay, so if your coworker is saying what is the file name or a folder name, it will be the same thing. Okay, it's just you don't have to specify if it's a specific folder or file, because down deep where the operating system is writing the system files, it is treating both file and a folder as a file. Okay, so moving along, let's see here if we need to change the permissions. So the permissions would be the same. Okay, changing the permissions would be the same. So I want to remove the execute permission for um, other group and other. So what would I do? I copy this here. And I want to remove the execute permission. So if I remove this, it will be 4. And this will be 4 too. Okay, so how would I remove this? The permission would be either chmod 744 dir1, okay, or chmod, and what would you do is g minus x o minus x and dir1. They all will be the same permissions. I mean, same way to remove the permissions. So you now remove the permission for group and others. Okay, any questions regarding this? I'm not going to go too much into this because it's the same exact way how you're going to do it. I'm going to put in the assignment so that you could have some fun with it. Okay, now.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Just want to. So the difference is when you give execute permission to for a file, that allows a user to delete and edit the file. And then when you give a user the execute permission for a directory, it just allows them to cd into it, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
So I should make a mark here.
Does it allow any user to also remove a directory if you give them the execute or no?
No,
Okay.
user cannot delete it. The only user who could delete the directory is the user, whoever is the owner. Yeah.
Okay. So which permission is it? Or is it just the owner? It doesn't matter.
It's just the owner.
Okay, okay.
All right, so moving along. So I want to tell you where all these permissions are coming from. Okay. There is something called umask. If you type umask, and hit enter as a root, the UMask is coming up as the UMask number output we have is 022. Okay, this is important. And so UMask. So the default for file and folder, okay? So let me copy it from here. And the default permission for a file. So for file is, the default permission is for file is 644. And then for directory, it's 755. Is 755. Six four four. Okay. Let's see how this UMask is working. So when I type UMask and it's coming up to 022, right? So when I type UMask, it's coming up to 022. So before that, let me break this up, what it means, 022 numbers. So I'm gonna tab it in a little bit and so the number here is what is represented here. So we have 0, 0, 2, 2. Okay, and so this is symbolic. Okay, so the first 0 is not being used actually, and the second 0 is for user. Okay, third user is for group, and fourth user is others. Okay, so so what is happening here is it's asking you to mask. What does mask means? Cover it up, right? Masking here means remove that particular permission. Masking means like cover it up. So if you cover it up number 2, permission from the group, you're removing it actually. So what is happening here is by default the permissions for the files are given using number 6. Zero zero two two. Okay, so by default permissions are calculated using 666. Okay, so let's do a math here. Why is it coming up as 666, right? So what I'll do is indent. Okay, so what I have here is user, group, other, and then default. Okay, so what do we have is system permission. So system permission is 666 for a file. 666. And the default permission is 666. And the UMask, what is our UMask set to? What is our UMask set to?
022.
Yeah. So remove the, so first one, don't worry about the first part here. Just worry about these three. For user, what is the UMask here? 0. What is the UMask for group? 2, 2, and 022. Now the final permission is okay. So what will be the final default permission? 6 minus 0 is how much? 6.
6, 4,
And
4.
4, 4. So the final is 644. And if you go up here and you see 644. Okay. So
I had a question. Why will the user take away all the permissions for himself?
no,
In
what is doing is system is providing this and the UMask is set to 022. By default, this has to set. We could manipulate the UMask. This is by default is set to 222. So system is giving you 666 permission, and then at the same time is checking, oh, the UMass is 022, then in a fraction of a second it's taking those permissions out. Okay, so let me remove this. Okay, so this is file permission. Okay, and directory with umask 0022. Okay, and by default permission is calculated using number 777. For directory, the default permission is calculated using 777. Okay, and let me copy the same exact thing here. So 777, and this is 777 minus excuse me. Okay, so 7 minus 0 is how much? 7. 7 minus 2 is 5. 5. So default will be 755. And you see over here, the default is 755. Okay, in my work experience, we never have to deal with changing around UMax, anything. So most of the time, you would get away with the UMass 022 as a root user. Okay, so just leave that alone as is. I just wanted to bring that up so that you will know how the UMask is working. Okay. All right, moving along. So we have the permissions here, right? So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk more about groups here. So far we talked about the user and changing the permissions and all that, right? By the way, the user administration and permission are, they both are the same topic. They are intertwined. Permissions and users go hand in hand. So let me talk about group. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when I did UMask, it came as 0002.
Yeah, because you are as a root, not as a root user.
Okay.
Okay. Typically you're not worried about as so in this job environment you're going to be root user, so you're not worried about the UMass you have. With that UMass, you barely have any permissions, anything like that, right? 0002 is only the last one is 2, or what do you have?
Yeah, the last one is 2.
Yeah.
000, then 2.
Yeah, so you'll be giving the read and write permissions a lot. Execute permission for others, you won't have it. Okay. So the default one for root user is 022.
Okay.
So group in Linux. Okay. So group is, what is a group? It's a collection of users. Okay. Groups is a collection of user. Okay, the main purpose is of the group is to define a set of permissions. or privileges. Like read and write or execute. Okay, so what will happen is if you have like 100 people and you're not going to be sitting there and giving permission to 100 people. All you have to do is put them in a one group and give the permission to a group, and voila, all those users in that group will have a permission. Okay, so now let's move on. So I have here ID test, right? Test.
Mr. Zafar.
Yeah.
So if you have multiple groups, how do you specify the read-write execute permissions for a particular group in the file permissions?
Yeah. So what we'll do is actually I'm coming to that right now.
Okay.
So if you see this user test, he's a part of a group called 1000 test and wheel group. You know what? Let me create a new user. All right, let's create a user. I'm going to create a user at Putin. He's in the news a lot, so let's do work on it. Okay, so if I do ID Putin, and that's his user ID, UID, and this is the um, letters, and this is the numeric ID. Okay, and this is the name of the user here. If I do ID 2001, it should bring up same thing here. Why? I mean, your name and your social security are tied together, right? That's how it is. So we have ID 2001, which belongs to Putin here. And this is a little confusing here. The group ID is also Putin, okay? And the groups he belonged to. If you are a member of one organization, more than likely you could be a member of. Can you be a member of more than one organization? Yeah, why not? It's possible, right? So
Yes.
So this part is informational here. So put the iPad right here.
So what is the difference between it stating the GID and then stating group separately?
Groups is his group ID is 3001, and this
So that will never change?
this part is this will never change,
Okay.
and we could kick him out of
Yeah.
his own group. The reason it says group is he's by default he's part of his own group, so he is this group here. Give me 1 second, let me get it. Abdullah, I need the red iPad. Blue dye. Okay, so let's take a look at ID test 1, and test 1 ID is 1001, and that's the name. Okay, and then group ID by default is going to create test with the same exact name. It's going to create the group. Okay, it's confusing, I know. And these is the groups he belongs to. So this thing could increase on. He could belong to more than one group. Okay, so over here, which group he belonged to? Oh, since he's already belonged to test group, he already belonged to test group, and he belonged to wheel group. And then we could continue and adding him to other groups here. Okay, so I'll do that in a minute here, but let me move on from this. So let's see, ID Putin. And what I'm going to do is before that, okay, so you know what, actually no, so 3. Okay, so what do we have? We have UID. UID stands for user ID, which is UID. Oops, not yet. Which is this part of the information. This information is UID, okay? And then GID, group ID, and it's this one. Okay, and he is a part of a group, and the groups he belonged to. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a group. I'm gonna say group add. Okay, and then I'm gonna say uh, okay, if you want, if you could add options here, okay, but I'll show that in 1 minute here. So I'm gonna do add it to a group called Russia. Okay, a group is there, and then I'm gonna create another group. This time I'm gonna specify the group name and ID also. Okay, so I'm gonna adding a group with G means specify a group ID. So this time around I'm gonna specify a group ID called 5000 5050. Okay, and I'm gonna give it a name Ukraine. Okay, so this in this scenario, what will happen is it will take a default value, whatever the system is providing here. It will take the default values and it will create the ID there. And where is this coming from? etc definitions. And over here you're specifying it.
The hyphen G you use, it has to go with some number.
Yeah, that means you're specifying the number. Did you get it?
No.
Over here we didn't specify, right?
Yes.
So probably it will take whatever the default we have. Will probably take like 3002. Since we specify the number, this part is going to be, or we'll take a look here. Let me get out of this.
Number is for the those many members are in there or what?
No. You specifying the group number. You specifying a specific group number to group name.
And the default is 1001, 1001 for everybody.
I think we changed it to 3. Before we changed it to 3000, right? In a login definitions. If you go up here, earlier in the class that started earlier today, we went in and changed the login definitions right here. Remember, we changed it to 2000 as a username, and group user IDs starts with 2000, and then the group ID starts with 3000. So let's take a look at what it might have started off. Okay, this is messed up. Okay, so before that, hold on. Let me copy this. Okay, so what we have here is so here we have command, and the command is group ID, group add, and hyphen G. That means we are specifying the group ID. Specifying the gate number, okay? And what is that number? Over here. We are telling a system to use the gate number, and we are giving the hyphen G. That means then you still have to provide the number here, 5050. That's a random number I came in my head. I'm using that, okay? And the name, group name, and I gave the group name Ukraine. In this scenario here, if I didn't use a hyphen G and anything, what happened here? It will probably, so how do I see a group? If I do group, group Russia, no, what I have to do is gid Russia. What?
Just ID Russia.
No, ID Russia, it'll take as the user ID, okay? So GID Russia. Okay, let's do groups. It goes and sits in cat etc group. Okay, you see here I created when we created Russia, it took the default number. Okay, and when we created the Ukraine, it didn't took the default here. Whatever we specified, it took that one. Okay, because we have authority to give whatever we want. We are overruling the default one and specifying the number here. Okay, I think you're still confused, right? It's just simple here.
Getting it now.
When you do group ID, what is happening here is it's going into VI etc login definitions, and it's picking from here. It's going in here and taking a look here. What is the next group ID would be? It will be in 3000 series. So 3001 is already taken. What it does is it will give you 3002, and the user ID would be 2000. So let me get out of here.
So in order to set up the exact number ID, that if you want to set that, you have to use -G.
Dash
Correct.
G and the number. If you want,
Okay.
then it will go like the next one in the series. So we
Yeah,
have,
it'll just go.
yeah, we have like test 3000, Putin end up being 3001, and then Russia would be 2, and then the Ukraine we specified it. If we didn't specify, what would have been? 3003. What time is it? 12:41. The group should have worked. Maybe if I do GID, I did this already, right? Okay, I'll find that out. How do you just only find the group and its name or whatever? Okay, now what we're gonna do is let's put Putin into those two groups, okay? So what we're gonna have to do is, I'm gonna clear the screen. Add user to the group. So what you're gonna do is, the command is user mod, okay? And what you're gonna do is -G, the group information, and I'm gonna put it in Russia. I could also give the number here, and I'm gonna give him Putin. So I'm telling group modify this dude and put him into Putin group, into the Russia group. Okay, if I do ID Putin, he's a part of a Russia group now. Okay, and now what did that just happen here? If I do -G, what does -G did is, it changed his main group ID. He was part of a Putin group. Now he's gone, and he's a part of a Russia group. He's not a part of a Putin group anymore. Now, if I do user mod -G, and I'm going to put him in Ukraine, and I'm going to put in Putin, UK, Ukraine. And if I do ID Ukraine, ID Putin, ID Putin. Now take a look here. He is a part of group Russia, and he is a part of group Ukraine also. Did you get it? So -G replaces primary group. Okay. Earlier he was part of a Putin group, right? And we did -G, lowercase g, so he's gone. He's not part of a Putin group anymore. He's just part of a Russia now. And then we added uppercase G, right? That means add him as a secondary group.
Basically, a hyphen lowercase g is for switching the groups, and then hyphen uppercase g is for being part of both the groups.
Yeah. Additional group, yeah. You got it. adds user secondary group replaces primary group. And if you see in here, and if I may bring this down here again, so user mod and specify G or -G, okay, and over here then group name or ID and then username. Okay, this would be Putin. And so what happened here is with this command, okay, actually let me move this up here. So if you look at this here now, so what does Putin belongs to? He belongs to, his a user ID is Putin, and group ID is 3002 now because he's in Russia group, and all the groups he belongs to so far is he belongs to Russia group and Ukraine group. All right. All right, so we'll stop it here and pick it up tomorrow from here. And if you guys have any questions, put in a group, and I'll upload the video as soon as I can. Any questions, please let me know in the group so that everybody else in the group can see your question. And if they can try to answer it, that'd be nice. If not, then I'll answer. Okay, everybody, have a good one.
Okay, have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.